What's going on, guys? It's Arrow. Welcome to my first build guide of 020. It is going to be an ice shot Amazon, and I am not kidding when I say this build has saved this league for me. It's got incredible clear, incredible single target, and it is a joy to play. So let's jump in. When I saw the Amazon Ascendancy, I knew that Ice Shot was going to be fantastic on it. The critical strike node provides a ridiculous amount of extra critical chance that allows us to really scale our damage high. So not only did Ice Shot get a buff, it got access to the Amazon Ascendancy, and it got a bunch of new support gems. The Lightning Rod interaction was nerfed significantly, so we had to come up with a new idea for single target. When an Ice Shot projectile hits a frost wall, it collides with the wall and then creates all of its secondary projectiles. All of those secondary projectiles can hit one target. So this pseudo shotgunning effect is enabled by a cast on crit frost wall setup going off as often as possible. This does very, very good single target damage, but then we also have a nuke button called freezing salvo. Once every 10 seconds, I can press this button and do a ton of damage. There are a bunch of new supports that really enable this build to go to the next level. And there's so many good supports that I actually am using 2 different Ice Shot setups. Now, I know that sounds like it's annoying, but it's actually really satisfying gameplay to alternate between them because one of them doesn't require you to aim. Every 6 seconds, you press your second Ice Shot, and using the Salvo support gem, it fires 6 additional projectiles in a Nova. Because these are random directions, it's not always going to hit the exact target you may be aiming for, but you mostly use it when you're just getting through maps. You walk into a pack of enemies, you press it, you clear the whole screen. Part of the reason I decided to go that route is because my main skill is using Volt. Volt allows you to travel 30 meters and gain 3 chains, or 10 or 20 meters and get 1 or 2 chains. This incentivizes you pressing the button less, which 1, solves your mana, and 2, makes it feel like you're playing a much more relaxed play style. You're not just constantly attacking. Once every couple of seconds, you hit one of your Ice Shots and get some really nice clear off of it. So Ice Shot for clear. And then on single target, you have the Ice Shot Frostwall tech, you have the freezing salvo button once every 10 seconds, and you also have infusion from the Amazon Ascendancy. We are generating a lot of power charges by freezing enemies and using combat frenzy, and then we consume them with charge infusion to give us more crit. And then when we have extra, we're using the potential support gem on our secondary Ice Shot. Every once in a while, when you press that second Ice Shot, it also consumes a charge to give you an almost guaranteed crit and continuing to empower your other Ice Shot arrows with infusions from the Ascendancy. This build is incredibly smooth to play. It is not a tank, but the freeze and the frost walls allow you to play very, very aggressively and not die too often. I went into a map yesterday by accident without my cast on crit frost wall setup going, and I felt so squishy that I very quickly realized something was wrong. Those frost walls not only help block enemies off, but enemies will target the frost walls. You want to get as many of these down as you can for both offense and defense. This build has a Maxroll Planner that's going to have all the gems that you need, all the gear that you need, and I intend to make a full Maxroll guide on this build as well. So check out the description. Maxroll guide is down there. It's going to have everything you need. We will jump in and talk about the gems and gear and such. You can also come check me out on Twitch. I'm live every single day, and I'm playing this build, pushing it into endgame right now. Gonna be taking down some bosses today, so stop by, drop that Twitch Prime. So let's jump in game and talk about the character. So here we have level 88, 2-day Prime delivery. I know, hilarious. We are evasion based. This number goes up significantly due to the black insignia when we are in combat. We get Tailwind on crit, and we are always critting. Tailwind gives you move speed, it gives you skill speed for attack speed, and it also gives you evasion rating. This hat was 1 exalt a few days ago. If you are an evasion-based crit build, you should be wearing this helmet. I had originally planned on going Hiri's Ire in this build, but Jung Roan made a video about it, and now the chest went from 1 divine to 25 divines. So we will be pivoting away from that, but using a rare allows us to get a bunch of spirit, which is super helpful. So I'm not going to talk too much about the character in game because I have a Maxroll Planner down in the description, which you should check out, but we'll go over the basics. You want a pure physical bow with high crit chance, and thirdly, you want attack speed. If you can't get attack speed, that's fine. The goal of this build is not to attack quickly, but to hit really hard. The harder you hit, the less times you have to click per screen, which means you're going to get better use of Volt, better uptime on Salvo, and less mana cost. Another important thing is that you need 110 spirit between your chest and your amulet. You could also get spirit on a corruption on an insignia. If you had to, you could put spirit in a rune socket on your weapon, but I don't recommend that. But you do need 110 to get where we are right now. You'll see I don't have an anoint on this. I just replaced it not too long ago. What you want is storm charged. Fear, Fear, and Envy. I'll probably do that right after this video. You want to make sure that you're getting some evasion on every gear piece as much as you can from the chest piece. I actually think I might drop the life on this in order to get a huge evasion roll, as evasion is our main source of defense. I actually don't recommend going for the plus levels of Proj. It adds a decent bit of damage, but it's not that better than what another suffix that you could get like critical strike chance, and it adds a ton of mana cost. Now, I still, as you can see, don't use that much mana, but when you start casting your Frost Walls and you use your Salvo, you can use enough mana to have to press your Mana Flask, and I don't really like doing that much, so I'll probably end up dropping the plus levels even though it is the most damage technically. As long as you're pressing your Mana Flask, should have no problem. So for skills, we use Infused Weapon here. I just have some damage supports on it. I'm also using Blind. It's just nice to blind enemies because, again, it really helps with our evasion. I use Conk Effect because I care more about single target, but you could also use another damage node here that doesn't remove the AoE. Like I said earlier, we have 2 Ice Shot setups, so our first one is going to be using a bunch of damage supports. It uses Ambush because that means our first hit is going to pretty much be guaranteed to be a crit. That's going to lead to a lot better clear, a lot better initial hits. Then we use Volt, which says for every 10 meters we move up to 30, we get 1 additional chain. So as long as you're not pressing this very often, you're going to be getting 1, 2, or 3 chains on your attacks. This feels super good to use, and the less you press it, the more you're moving, the more uptime you have on your chains. That's why we use a second Ice Shot setup that uses Salvo. Every 6 seconds you can press this and get the full number of seals, which is going to give you 6 additional projectiles. I also use Pinpoint Crit in here to get more crit chance, as well as potential for even more crit chance. This also guarantees that this is always going to be a crit. It will consume a power charge that we gain from Combat Frenzy. We need to consume charges in order for Infused Weapon to work. Now, you don't have to press this because Charge Infusion is consuming them regularly anyway, but you end up with more charges than you can spend for the most part. So every time you press this, you consume more of the charges, which gives you even better uptime on your Infused Weapon bonus damage. So this secondary Ice Shot is a 360 degree nova of projectiles. Now, they're fired randomly, so sometimes they all fire on one side. But for the most part, once you get up to 3, you press it and you get a really nice AoE clear. We have Ricochet on this for more projectiles chaining off of terrain. It ends up being a really nice clear button. So as we run around a map, we press 1, and then we'll press the other, and then we'll press the other, and then we'll get to 3 stacks on our first one, and we can press that again. It's a very casual playstyle. It doesn't require much aiming, especially because of this secondary Ice Shot, and the clear feels really good. The single target burst of Freezing Salvo is crazy, but even without the Freezing Salvo, just from our Frost Walls and our Ice Shot, our single target is very good. I'm currently farming essences, and my Freezing Salvo almost always one-shots the essence, unless it has 4+ essences on it. So let's talk about the tree. You definitely want to go for Predatory Instinct first. It's just a bunch more damage. This feels really nice. I went for crit first, and I shouldn't have. You can go for that second, and then by your 3rd lab, you should have some charge generation. We use Combat Frenzy alongside of Resonance to give us power charges. We want power charges because that gives us more cold damage. Then for Uber Lab, you take Infused Avatar. This just gives you better uptime on your infused projectiles. And this is all a ton of damage. Now, we are a pure damage ascendancy, which means you're going to feel squishy if you're not doing good damage. So make sure you upgrade your bow and make sure you get as much evasion as possible on gear. This tree is super straightforward. We're taking a lot of crit. We're taking a lot of pen. Between this node and these 2 nodes here, I think we have like 30 something pen. And then we have a bunch of jewels that have damage penetrates up to 10 cold res, which means even on enemies with extra res, we're penning them pretty close to 0. I had tried to set up with exposure from Frostbomb and hypothermia for reduced cold resistance, and it just was too many buttons and it wasn't giving me much value. You get a couple of jewels with crit multi and cold pen, and you're cruising. We get a couple of accuracy wheels, but not a ton here. I don't think accuracy is really worth leaning into unless you are full deck stacking. So you just take a couple of the useful wheels that are nearby. And as you can see here, we have 4,700 accuracy. This was with very little effort, and don't trust this number here, but this is giving us somewhere between 5 and 8 flat critical strike chance, which is then increased by our increases to crit chance. Getting to 50% means that ambush gets us to 100. So our first hit on every enemy will be a crit with our regular Ice Shot. And then our other Ice Shot also gets to 50%. And then with Pinpoint and Potential, this is also going to crit every time. Our Freezing Salvo is able to run Inevitable Crit, which gives us 100% crit chance every time we use it because we can only use it once every 10 seconds. So our base crit here is 30%. And then we get, again, a bunch more. And I think our crit chance is something like 60 to 75% on this. So I'm going to leave it at that. If you have any more questions, you can leave them in the comments or stop on my Twitch, twitch.tv/AER0__. you can just come by and say hi or drop that Twitch Prime. Again, I plan on making a Maxroll guide for this build over the coming days, but for now there is a planner in the description that has all of the information that you need. So make sure to check that out. So make sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube, and that is going to do it for me. Thank you for watching, and as always, take care.